It's good to have everybody on the call this morning. Um, uh, and we're just going to get right into it. I know I'm not too sure if I'm going to get very far today um, in sharing. It's kind of a lot to cover, but I'm going to try my best to kind of push through because it's some of the stuff is what we've known and what we've heard before, but it's bringing fresh eyes and bringing fresh perspective to it. And early in the year, I was talking about life and immortality, and that's where I want to go right back to, um, exploring that, engaging that, because I think that's where it's at, to be honest. And the Lord spoke and He said, "I've given you life, and I've given it to you more abundantly." So it's one of the areas that we focused on in terms of light and energy, and who we are and how we engage the reality of who we are as we walk out immortality. It's something that we need to start engaging, and it is something that we need to start talking about and being collaborative amidst the conflicting destiny scroll, amidst the conflicting circumstances. And I use the word conflicting because it's not congruent to what we know and who we are, but it is seem to come across very adversarial at times when we think about our mandate, our purpose, and walking out the life that's been given. It's not something that just happens, but there is a way in which we have to engage it. And in engaging it, that's how we are able to manifest who we are. So that's how I see it. So what I want to do this morning is to start off this morning by really trying to look at scripture this morning. And then if we have the time, more likely we will. We just go into some ideas and thoughts and expressions that's been given to me. And so we move forward like that. We want to start this morning looking at Luke chapter 15, the Mirror Study Bible. Luke chapter 15, and you can turn to it if you so desire. Other than that, you can read with me on the screen. In Luke chapter 15, verse 9, it says, And when she finds it, they're talking about the lost coin, she calls her friends and neighbors to come and celebrate with her that she has found her precious coin. And one of the things I love about Jesus is the ability to give stories, and stories that was just not just make up stories. Like, it's a story that's just made up with no relevance to the world around him. But he created stories that the hearers and the people who would hear him would be able to relate and connect to what he's sharing and what he's saying and what is he talking about. He had this uncanny ability to share stories that was relatable, right? And so, when you hear the story, you connect in a deep way to uh from your own perspective. You take away from it what is being discussed. And we wouldn't get into the parable of the lost coins, but he spoke a lot of parables. And I find that to be very imaginative. instructive, innovative, and amazing. The power story, being able to tell stories in a way that brings people closer, allows people to allows different individuals to ask questions about uh, who they are and where they're going and stuff like that. So in the notes, it says the lost coin never lost its original value. I like that. It's never lost its original value, neither its authentic image and inscription. As pointed out by Jesus in another conversation, when he mentions the image and inscription of the coin in answering the questions about taxes, then he says, return to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and whose image and inscription do you hear? Return to God what belongs to God. I like that. The coin was lost, but not it's the image of it, nor its or authentic image or inscription, nor its value. And one of the things that the Spirit of the Lord has been teaching me over the last, I would say, probably month, is that do not get confused between location and identity. Don't get you get people get confused between one's location and or where one's at and one's identity. For example, if you were to same thing, you come to Houston or you fly into another city and you rent a car and you're trying to get somewhere, but the GPS may not be functioning, it may not be working as well as it should. For whatever reason, you find yourself quote unquote lost, meaning that you're not sure, number one, where you are, and where you are is not necessarily where you should be. And you're having to navigate and you're having to try to figure out direction to get to where you want to be. And so in modern day thinking, in that situation in which one find themselves, we use the word you are lost. And being lost doesn't mean that you, the individual, somehow being lost robs you and devalues you in your person. That's not accurate. And the gospel, Jesus's teachings and the teachings of the apostles clarifies that over and over and over and over and over and over and over. That it is what you do, even what you do, does not define necessarily who you are. Now, what you do, there's a direct consequences. Okay, there are consequences. If you do certain things, then certain things happen. I mean, that's just the laws that are placed there by the Father. So you reap what you sow. That's a consequence of one's actions. You face those. You are having to be responsible and accountable, or be held accountable for the actions. Your actions. So that's really, really that is not something that goes away. But what I am saying though is that even though you find yourself um, being placed in certain scenarios, or whether it's something has been done to you, whether it is something that you did, whether it is you know something that brought about failure, something that brought about a hurt, something that brought about pain, something that brought about whatever, wherever you find yourself. it is that's not who you are. That is where that's what's happening to you. That's where you are located. So location is not identity. Location is not identity. It's different. It still does not take away from your significance, and it still does not take away or diminish one's value. And so the Lord's been really been kind of been engaging me on that location, experience. Location is representative of one's experience. It's representative of one's um, life and where they are, what they've done, what they and stuff like that. And so you cannot use that principle of where you are to diminish or rob you of who you are. And this morning and this small little series that I'm about to engage really highlights that and really identifies that truth. So even as the lost coin, its original value is not robbed of its value because of an experience. It's not robbed of its value because it became lost. So anyhow, verse 10. So Jesus continues. He says, I tell you, the faces of the celestial messengers light up with joy over a single person who rediscovers their authentic value and identity. Um, I like what it says here. Um, it says, it describes the awakening of the mind to that which is true, a real alignment of one's reasoning. It is a gathering of one's thoughts, a co-knowing. So fate is not a decision, it is a discovery. And growing up in the faith movement and hearing how faith is described, um, it's just been amazing um, that not in this way, not in the way that it's not about so much a decision as much as it is about a discovery, an awakening, an awareness, growing in the awareness of what is true. That is what faith is, right? So in verse 11, he says, then he continued, a certain man had two sons. So in lieu of the thoughts before, Jesus begins to talk about the prodigal son, the understanding of value, the understanding of what happens if certain things take place, you make mistakes, you wander off in your life and you make terrible mistakes. What happens to that person who wanders off? What happens to that person who takes the long road of Moria in some ways, intentionally by themselves? Sometimes we are taken there, like I use that word from the Lord of the Rings, right? Sometimes we are taken, we are taken there, and sometimes we intentionally go there. The scripture says the way of the transgressor is hard. We in ourselves self-determined to do what we want to do, the way we want to do it, when we want to do it, where we want to do it. That's fine. The Lord doesn't, the Lord doesn't, he doesn't judge us like that. But what he does is that he says, okay, if this is the way you want to go, if this is the path you want to take, then okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's see what happens. But by and by, we begin to see the error of our ways. By and by, we begin to learn that, wait a minute, this pathway, I could have done this very differently. Or because you begin to move on in the experiences of life and you begin to understand, you didn't quite see or you didn't quite have the full sense of things as you thought. And the Lord knows these things. And He is ever patient, He's ever caring, He's ever loving, He's ever forgiving. And it's okay, right? He is near us. He is the one who loves us and the one who is there for us. He is never leave us nor forsake us, and that is something that we will get into later on. He's not ever going to abandon you. Never is he going to abandon you. He's never going to leave you. He's never going to forsake you because of something you did. Never, he's never going to do that. And that is more than just a comforting thought. That is amazing love. That he will never abandon you because of something you did. Right? That's really, really important. But he's talking about, in reference to the coin and the coin not losing its value, he is he's giving another story. He's bringing another story, and he's awakening the minds of those as he speaks, um, life and what happens in life and the reality of living, raising a family, of raising children, of you know engaging with people whom you love dearly and whom you are very close to. And it's within this setting of a family that he begins to give the story. And he says in verse 12, he says, a certain man, starting in verse 11, had two sons. A certain man had two sons. The youngest approached his father and said, Father, give me my share of our inheritance. So the father gave them, the father gave them his life. That's a translation that is um, out of the mirror. And the other translation it just says, so the father gave him what he asked for. You'll come back to that. And so in verse 13 it says, so within a few days the young man had gathered all his belongings and left to a foreign country far away from home. Far as he could get from his father's house. As far as he can get from his home, he wanted to be far away. Far, far away. He, for whatever reason, Jesus does not give the background of this young man's disposition, whether he was offended by his father, whether he, we're not given any of that. All that is described is the fact that this man wanted to get as far as possible away from his home. As far away as is possible. Okay. And there was nothing holding him back now. And he soon squandered his inheritance, living it up without any restraint whatsoever. No restraint. Watch, he did it. Watch me. He took the inheritance, the belongings, all that he had, and he lived it up. He went, as we say, crazy, crazy, doing all kinds of stuff and so on. Okay. So in verse 14, by now, he exhausted his resources, and to make matters worse, a severe famine gripped the land, and he began to be in dire need. So, um, went out you know, lived his life, um, wasted his money, lived a sort of a riotous, sort of a wild, kind of living. It looked like, um, wine, money, song, whatever, and found himself experiencing in the region where he was living, found himself in what you call a recession, a serious recession. All right, if we want to use the modern day terms, found himself in a serious recession, and found himself in debt and in serious financial serious financial problems, financial issues. In verse 15, so he sojourned further into the country and gathered himself to a local citizens who sent him into his fields to shepherd his pigs. Right? So very interesting that it got so bad that he started to work for a pig farmer, and he was there working with the pigs and so on. And in verse 16 says he was so desperately hungry that he was even craving to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were feeding on, but no one would allow him to. So it got so bad that he wanted to eat the food that the pigs did eat and couldn't even get what they were eating. Okay. It was 17. So at this point, he came to his senses. He came to his senses. Thinking out loud, he said, my father has many hirelings working for him, and everyone has more than enough to eat. And here I am dying of hunger. The word there is the word ekomai, to come, east, huaton, to oneself, to one's senses, to return to self. This reminds of the Genesis story. The sword would always point back to mankind's original identity. The Hebrew word in Genesis 24, where the cherub, which with the flaming sword was positioned at the eastern gate of Eden, is a prime immature root meaning to turn about, by implication, to change, to return, to be converted, to turn back. Here in Luke 15, the prodigal son returns to himself. Plato is quoted by Ackerman, Christian element in Plato, as thinking of redemption as coming to oneself. Though he turned to himself, he did not find himself in his shame. He found himself in his father's embrace. And I love that. Verse 18. And she was up and ready to go and began to rehearse what he would do. He said, I will travel home to face my father and tell him that I have sinned against heaven and before him. I will convince him that I am no longer worthy to be called his son. In lieu of everything he did, the abandonment of his father, the abandonment of his house, his righteous life, the loss of his inheritance, the condition in which he found himself, all of that he added up and he said, I am not worthy. I am not worthy in lieu of what I've done, in lieu of the life that I've lived, in lieu of all of these things. I am not worthy. I have lost my value as a son. Okay. Uh, and he says, I'm no longer worthy to be called his son, and beg him to employ me as one of his hired servants. And with that, he got up and began to the return journey to his father. He was yet a long way off from home when his father saw him, and filled with compassion, ran to his son. You read this, and every time you read the scriptures, you always see something different. You always see something that you didn't see before. And, it's amazing. He ran to his son. He didn't wait till his son got home. He ran to his son, flung his arms around his son's neck, and kissed him fondly. In verse 21, and when the son caught his breath, when the son caught his breath, he began his rehearsed sinner's prayer. Father, I have sinned before heaven and in your face, and I'm not worthy to be known as your son. The father wasn't paying any attention to this and didn't give him a chance to finish his rehearsed plea. He merely instructed his slaves to immediately bring out the best robe and clothe him in it and give him a ring to put on his finger and shoes for his feet. In full anticipation of his son's return, he now also had the grain fattened calf brought and slaughtered. It was party time. So with our minds flooded with joy, let the merry celebrations begin. Verse 24. This is the reason for our joy. My son here was dead, and he was revived. He seemed to be lost forever, but here he is found. And so began the merry celebration. In verse 25, the older brother was returning from the field, and approaching the house, he heard what sounded like a concert of instruments and a choir of voices singing and dancing. Alarmed, he called one of the boy servants and asked him what this was all about. And the boy answered, your brother is here. So your father sacrificed the grain fattened calf to celebrate your brother's returning home in good health. The news enraged the older brother, who had no desire to join them. Then his heart went out and pleaded. Then his father went out and pleaded with him, because he's like, where's your brother? So the father went out looking for the the older brother, um, who was not joining in the feast. Verse 29. He answered his father, consider the many years that I have toiled for you like a slave, I have toiled for you like a slave. And at no time did I ever dodge any of your commandments. Not once. Yet you never considered rewarding me. Not once. Even with a little lamb, so I could party with my friends. You never gave me anything. You never did anything for me. You never reached out to me. You never did any of that. Right? However, when this son of yours comes here, having devoured your savings by wasting it on prostitutes. You slayed the grain fattened calf. He said to him, my dear child, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. To now have our minds flooded with merriness and exceeding joy is fitting, because your own brother was dead and he's alive again. He was lost and is found. In all three stories, the term lost implies ownership. You cannot be lost unless you belong. And that makes sense, doesn't it? You can't you can't be lost unless you belong somewhere, right? Jesus again points the Pharisees and the law professors to the fact that the Gentiles and the Jews have the same Father and share the same value and heirship. Sonship squandered reduces life to slavery. This was true for both brothers in the story, right? Sonship life squandered reduces one to slavery. So there's the consequences, right? And we will talk a little bit about the prodigal. I'll give my own views on it. But sonship life squandered reduces one to slavery. So it doesn't. Jesus is not saying that the choices we make that we're not going to pay the consequences of those choices, or we're going to face the consequences of those choices. He's not saying that, but he is saying that amidst those consequences and amidst where we find ourselves, if we have the greatest of opportunity to come to ourselves, we have the greatest opportunity to experience the awakening of who we are in our significance and our value. That as much as our past actions and our past behavior brought about dire consequences in our lives, yet even those consequences and those experiences cannot and will not ever rob us or take away from who we are and our value and the love and the grace and the favor that is that our Father has toward us. Yeah. So 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 he writes in commentary, right? Oh, the beauty of a father who is not offended by the elder brother's initial attitude, but pleads with the same urgency, my boy, come, join the party. I can even see the stubborn brother beginning to tap his feet because of the irresistible appeal of the festival sound and the constant echo of the father's invitation. Sin is singular, its symptoms are plural. It's been a sonship thing from the beginning. No wonder Jesus says freedom indeed is found in the truth of our authentic and redeemed sonship. Sin is not about things you do or don't do. Sin is missing out on sonship. Would you say that the church in all its many groupings have successfully converted about, say, 10% or even 1% perhaps of the entire human population? While Jesus revealed in this amazing story that 99 sheep in the field is not enough, he goes after the last one, not out of a sense of duty until he finally gives up on it. but he seeks until he finds the one. The good news is that the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son are now all found safe and sound in Jesus. His death was the doorway into the very domain in which mankind was held prisoner. He descended into the darkest and the deepest dungeons of our lostness, and in the resurrection, he led us as trophies in his triumphant procession on high. Ephesians 4, verse 8 and 9. His return to the Father is humanity's return. The problem is, most people, including most Bible believers, don't know it. This is why we live our lives with persuasion, intent, and passion to tell them, Isaiah 49. Multitudes are in hell on this side of the grave. We have the keys to unlock a door that was already open when Jesus went there as a man to free the human race from Adam till Noah to now. Wow. What joy to introduce people to the freedom of sonship. Let's not make the other brother of a reference when we can know the Father's heart. Amen. So this is the beginning of the presentation. I don't know if anybody has any comments, quick comments before we continue. But it reveals the heart of the Father, but it also reveals the heart of sons. It reveals the heart of those of us who have been awakened to the Father's love and to be uniquely equipped to engage all of creation. To, the scripture talks about saviors that shall appear in the midst of Zion. And so this understanding of sonship is very, very important. Very important that we understand sonship and what it actually means. Because sonship is not necessarily an individualistic thing. Sonship has to do with the creation. The earnest expectation of the creature, the scripture says, awaits on tiptoe for the manifestations of the sons of God. And so the awakening or the coming into view of your own sonship and your own authenticity, by extension, would release and touch the creation around you. It is just inevitable. And so this presentation, this is how I wanted to start it this morning. I wanted to talk about, the idea of using the prodigal son as the background to engage in sonship in very specific terms. Because I think we've heard about it, we've talked about it in different ones, as you know, I've talked about sonship in different ways. But the key thing for me this morning is that in coming into one's and facing and embracing and accepting one's authentic self as mirrored in the Father, in terms of your value and significance, and realizing that it doesn't matter what happened in the years gone by, or what is happening in the present moment, or what will happen in the future. Your sonship, your value, your significance, nothing can take that away. Nothing can erase, diminish that essence. You can take a coin and throw it into the dung heap, throw it into the place where the pigs defecate, and it gets buried in the muck, and it gets buried in the mud, and it gets buried in filth. That coin retains its value, regardless of its environment. That coin retains its value. And so we have been taught, whether through secularism or through Christian religion, or whatever religion that we've been engaged in the past as to you are what you do, right? And what you do and the consequences of your actions, the values who you are intrinsically. And I am here to tell you that is not true. That is absolutely not true. That what is now, one can say that the perception of men and the view of men and the opinion of men and the heart of men, right? Including those of your own household, including those whom is closest to you, right? They can judge you just like the older brother judged his younger brother and say, devalue him to the point where that he's not valued because of what he's done, right? I mean, and that's a natural human disposition to value, to devalue someone based upon what they've done. And that's the common acceptance. That's the standard modus operandi in our world. You know, this is being written more than 2,000 years ago. And we have to accept the fact that men have not evolved or adapted into society. No, you are you are defined by what you do, performance, right? The whole realm of works. You are defined by what you do. And if you do good, thumbs up. If you do error, thumbs down. And your value goes down with what you do, or your value goes up with what you do. And so the idea of the pretense that, secularism is not a religion is a joke, because it is. It is based upon the law of works. The law of works, right? So the law of works has nothing to do with, because you see, if you understand your value, if you really understand who you are, then you become like Jesus. Look at Jesus. I mean, look at the kind of gifting, look at the kind of manifestation, look at the kind of impact that he's made in all of creation. And that's just, he was the firstborn among many brethren, right? So it's inevitable that works has nothing to do with ability. That's what we were talking about. But works in this case has to do with a performance and a ritual, a modus operandi that is based upon do's and don'ts, that is connected and riveted to your value. That is what the spirit of works is. The spirit of works is not about not doing or not doing in the sense of engaging life and living and impacting and growing and experiencing. That's not what the spirit of works has to do. Where Paul moved against it, wrote against it over and over and over. In the case of Jewry, is the fact that when you take what you do, whether it's, in terms of performance, and you use that as a mechanism, as a measuring rod to value or devalue your life, that is the spirit of works. That's what that is. That is what the Spirit of God is vehemently against. And our world is filled with that. Our world is filled with that type of construct. Our world is defined by that kind of interface, right? And we have to be able to be free from that sense of value, that we are valued, and it is based upon your understanding and embracing of your significance that you are able to do great things. Greater work shall you do, right? And greater works means the manifestation of, you are able now to leverage that value against all the odds, against all the naysaying, against all the negative, against all of the negative story, against all of everything that's coming against you, you are able to leverage that value, that out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. The leveraging of that authentic value never diminishes, regardless of the happenings of life. Your value as to who God says you are, as to who you are, remains intact. Now that is good news. Yeah, so basically it's like this can every single person on this call can talk about value, because every day we are challenged in our value, whether it be on our jobs, whether it be in our family life, whether it be in our marriages, whether it be in our every single day, whether it be in our singleness, it every single day, every single hour, we are challenged. There is a challenge in reference to your value. And this is really, really important. And I think the Lord really wants us to face and come face to face with our value, you know, come face to face with our value. And, and not while you're coming face to face with your value, you're thinking about this or that or the other, or this is not working out, or this was really tough, or this was difficult, and I can't take it no more, and I can't go forward. So there is frustrations. There is difficulty, there is lack, there are challenges. But we must be very, very, very careful not to translate those experiences in relating to in diminishing our own value. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, because it is because of your that very value, that very value, that inherent value is literally the secret. It's where it is that very value, who you are, that will bring about the change, that will bring about the miracle, that will bring about everything that is that is standing against you. That very value, that very thing is what's going to bring about and mirror the change that is required in every issue, every situation that you face. That is what I'm trying to say. That's what I believe the Spirit of God is really saying this morning. Do you know your value? Because a lot of times when we don't really know our value, we make decisions that is representative of us devaluing ourselves, of compromising our value because we want to appease, or we want to whatever it is that we're trying to do to get along or to move ahead. We constantly devalue who we are in order to engage the life around us. So we make choices, we make decisions that rob us of our value in a certain way because of how we see ourselves. And if we would really see ourselves as who we really are in value, that is going to really, in spite of the odds, in spite of the difficulty, in spite of the challenges, in spite of the all of it, we're consistently going to make choices that is directly related to our wealth, to our life, to who we really are in our authentic self. And as we consistently make choices that is representative of our significance, that is representative of our value, you're going to realize that you're going to make some choices that are going to be bold, audacious, amazing, incredible, innovative, creative, because you are not losing sight of your value. So where in a given situation one would say, this is how you this is probably how they're gonna have to operate, or this is probably how they're gonna have to behave or engage. Your behavior may not be consistent with that because you are not losing sight of who you are, right? The thing is that I say, you can never give away what you don't have. You know, Jesus, he said, love your neighbors, you love yourself. Well, you have to begin to really appreciate you and your value. And it's just how it works. When you begin to truly value you, it just invariably, you are going to begin to value others around you because you are going to begin to see their own struggles, their own shortcomings, and all of that, and go past that, see past their shortcomings, see past their struggles, see past their issues, see past all of it, and recognize their value. But you cannot see other people's value until you see your own. You're not going to be able, until you really understand and embrace and appreciate your value, you can't appreciate the value of others, really. See? So it's like a circle, right? Um, so just want to mention that. All right. Okay. So we want to talk about we want to talk about we want to talk about the journey against the backdrop of the prodigal son, and you're going to see that theme being worked in and out throughout the this engagement over the next, I don't know, probably a couple Sundays. Shouldn't be more than that. Um, we are going to see um, looking at our journey from Adam to Christ, from servanthood to mature sonship, and the reason why I'm doing this is so that we can begin to evaluate and become, as it were, self-aware. Self-aware in terms of, first and foremost, who we are in terms of our true identity. Self-aware in terms of it's a journey. It's who we are becoming in manifestation as to what we are ever engaging, right? So there's that. Um, to assess where we are in our maturity and where are we in terms of where am I? Where am I in terms of my maturity, in terms of my own journey, right? And stuff like that. And hopefully, as we continue to talk and engage in this, that it's going to be very, very encouraging, right? What's meant to be very encouraging, and to really affirm your value as an individual and by extension as a collective, that we can begin to value who we are. When something is valuable, there's a way that you treat it. There's a way that you handle it. There's a way that you take care of it. There's a way that you operate with it. There's a careful way that you get around it. You just don't just just handle it any way. It's just not like you just take it and you just throw it in one in a cupboard, or there's a glassware that's $100,000, right? Some antique. It's worth $100,000. When you go towards that glassware or whatever it is, and you hold it, there's a way you hold it. No, there's a way that you approach it. There's a way that you take it up. There's a way that you set it down. There's a way that you put it away. There's a way that you handle it. because it's worth a lot. There's value, there's recognized value. And so there's a way that you treat, there's a way that you engage it because it's valuable. Well, the first thing is that there's a way that you are valued, and there's a way that you need to treat yourself. There's a way that you need to look at yourself. There's a way that you need to engage yourself. And it's not, please, please, it's not about self-conceit and egotism and narcissism. That's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about looking at and engaging and valuing who you are authentically. I mean, stripping away all of the extraneous and really looking at yourself, examining yourself, not based upon behavior, not based upon past good and bad, not based upon any of those things, but truly looking and examining who you are in your value. And you begin to appreciate, my God, I mean, hey, hey, I am awesome. I am awesome. I am my father's son. I am my father's daughter. I'm amazing. I am all that he is. And exploring that is what life is all about. Exploring your value, discovering your uniqueness, discovering all that is inside of you, that treasure that is in that earthen vessel. What treasure is there in that earthen vessel? Exploring that, not allowing the constraints of life, the lack of money, the lack of opportunity, the lack of friends, the lack of, because that's how we sort of oriented. We always see the lack. We always see what is not as opposed to what is. We always see what we don't have as opposed to what's been given. That's how our minds are trained, and that's how we are oriented. But what we need to really begin to understand, and what we really need to begin to know, is come face to face with our value. Because when we come face to face with our value, all of a sudden, that which you looked at that was lacking, all of a sudden, you see every challenge as an opportunity. You see every problem as something to be solved, and every need as something to be fulfilled. In other words, the glass is not half empty, the glass is half filled. There is a different perception and interaction with the world around you because of the knowing and the experiencing and the understanding of your value. And that is really critical, you know. Um, you know, because if you understand your value, if you really know what your value is, do you know what is going to permit you, what you are going to be permitted to do? Do you know that? Do you know that if you really understand and believe how valuable you are, do you know what that is going to do for you? Do you know that it's going to do some things that's going to be amazing? It's like we see it all around us. We see it all around us, and the love of God is so amazing. You know, um, you know, I'm not trying to be, get into political, but Elon Musk, I saw a clip of him where he was he was talking, and he was talking about to a group of people, but he was talking on a video. He was talking to a whole conference, but they had him on video. I don't know if it's because he couldn't attend or whatever, but they had him on video, and they were questioning him. And he said, I am just so possessed with the future. I can't help myself. I can't help myself. the limitless possibilities I am confronted with on a daily basis. The abundance. I am overwhelmed with abundance. The future is so pregnant with possibilities that I'm in a place where I am just, I am just engaging it every day with just amazement. And he was talking about that. And so the Lord allows and he raises up different ones to mirror himself, regardless of a lot of things. But I took away from that. I said, wow, look at that. That's what made this guy be who he is. They say that he's going to be the first trillionaire, whatever, right? The point I'm making is when you listen to him, because there's some crazy stuff that he says and all of that stuff, but there are times when you listen to him ever so often. When I have heard him speak, there is an allowance that he gives himself to be, to express, to engage, to to experience, right? That has nothing to do with anything around him. It has nothing to do with anything that anybody says. It has nothing to do with, he gives himself the right, he gives himself that permission to engage abundance, to engage the abundance of the possibilities of the future. He is somebody who is absolutely obsessed with the future and the abundance that lies therein. And I said that to say that don't belittle what I am saying when it comes to value, because we are confronted with this question of value every single moment, every single second, every single minute of every day. And that value, when we lose it, when we lose our intrinsic value, there are choices, there are decisions, there are things that we do, there are responses, even in terms of our feelings. You feel a certain way. There's a feeling that you have. You feel stressed. You feel you feel you feel that you're just wasting time. You feel like you're running out of time. That you feel like if you're just doing this and then what's the end thereof? And you're trapped. All of that stuff has to do with value. It does, right? When you understand who you are, when you begin to understand your authentic self, that there is something about that changes the world around you and changes your perspective of everything around you. And I have seen in my own personal life where the Spirit of the Lord has taken me to the mountaintop, like Martin Luther says. and, and I have seen my value. I have seen it. I know who I am. I know who I am. I know who God says that I am. Right? But I have also experienced of brought down from the mountaintop into the valley. And the Lord spoke to the man who was in the valley of dry bones, and he says to him, "Son of man, can these bones live?" That was all around him, and the Lord was and has been saying the same to me, right? And because we don't understand and know our value, he asked the prophet, he says, "Can these bones live?" And the man is like, "What? Bones? These things? Lord, you know, I don't, you know. So he put it right back on the Lord, right? He put it right back. He take the question was asked, he put it right back to him. Say, you know. And the Lord says, look, let's not play that game. Let's not play that game today. Listen to me. Open up your mouth and let what is in you come out of you. Let the life that's inside of you, let the rivers of living water that is buried, ebbed inside of you, trapped on the inside of you. I want that life out. Prophesy that these bones will live. See, that's value. That's knowing your value. When you know your value, incredible things take place. Incredible, unbelievable things begin to happen in and around your life because you are beginning to leverage, to take of that value and use that value or expend it or spend it in a way that others can share in it. Okay. So for example, Jesus was Jesus grew up in a very depressed neighborhood. Okay. And somebody asks, you know, you know, how, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? I mean, the question was asked, is like, what? Nazareth? Nazareth? Again, defining one's location with one's value. See? Nazareth, Fifth Ward. Okay. The idea of where you are located is directly related to who you are in your value. So we built all kinds of prisons and all kinds of matrix on the earth, imprison the minds and hearts of men based upon where they live, their location, and how they're defined and how they're seen and how they're perceived. Right? And so Jesus knew his value and understood his significance. And just because he was born in Nazareth, just because he grew up in a certain specific space and place, had no bearings on who he is and what he was and what he will be. And he mirrored that life in front of us. And so I want us to understand, even as we go through this study, I want you to come face to face with your own value and to recognize, based upon that value, every single day you are going to have to make choices. Every single day you are going to have to make decisions. But I want you to start making those decisions directly in reference and based upon your authenticity, your value. Because a lot of times we allow fear and intimidation to come in and diminish our value. That's what fear does. Fear diminishes your value. You know that, right? You're fearful, and what it does, it diminishes. Intimidation, it diminishes. You're engaging something, you're engaging a situation, you're engaging a challenge, whatever that is, on your job, in school, whatever it is, you're engaging that. And that thing is so intimidating that it says, you better back down. This is not going to work. This is not going to happen. This is not, you're going to fail. You're not going to be who you think you are. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And there is this invisible index finger that's pushing its finger into your chest and is saying back down and just back down because you are nobody. Right? And so it is understanding your value that you're able to step forward in front of the giant and slay it. It's like David saying, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that defies the army of God? See, knowing your value, it permits you to live. It permits you to be free. It permits you to do incredible things that is not defined and you're not boxed in by your gender, by your race, by your nationality, by your past, by your present, by things that people have said about you. And none of those things qualify when it comes to your value, right? That's really important that I make that clear in our conversation, in our discussion, because it is imperative that we have a certain mindset, that there's a certain mentality that we are equipped with when it comes to when you step to the table, you step into the table knowing that you are rightfully, you are there, and this is your right. This is, hey, I am here, and I understand why I'm here, and I know who I am, and I know who is in me. Hey, you know, I don't have to placate anybody. I don't have to justify my existence, my promotion, my advancement, my functionality, or any of those things to anybody. Because I am and in myself know my value. I don't know why I'm going on this. There's really powerful, very, very powerful presence of God to impressing this thing. It's like this thing is so crucible that it would mean it will ultimately determine what happens to us as individuals and the choices and decisions that we are going to make in the near future. It is like it's a very, 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 very significant thing that I'm talking about this morning, that we have to begin to face our value and to embrace it and to appreciate it and to understand it, because that is what is going to bring about your freedom financially, freedom economically, freedom socially, freedom in just many myriad ways. It is what is going to allow us to live an overcoming life when we begin to understand this principle of value, intrinsic value. Whew, okay, wow, what time it is now? All right, let me just give about 5 minutes just to talk about a little bit of thing, and then I'll just end it this morning. So the journey from Adam to Christ, from servanthood to mature sonship, and that phrasing has to do with the prodigal son. So one understands servanthood, and the other, was determined to just live a lawless life. There is that movement of self-determination as opposed to servanthood. You're self-determined, you're driven by self-determination. We talk about that, talk about, where does self-determination come from? You're self-determined, you're driven in a certain way, you're self-determined to do a certain way, or to function a certain way, to operate a certain way. That may not necessarily be accurate, right? And how does the Father deal with that? How does the Lord deal with that? And he deals with it quite well. I mean, he helps us along. It doesn't matter whether we are in that self-determined, driven state, or we are in that servant state, which is the same, which is basically two sides of the same coin. The prodigal son is really is really one coin. It's really about the coin, right? So Jesus is using, we talked about the coin, the principle of the lost coin, and then he goes right into the principle of the prodigal son. It's the two sides of the same coin. Okay, so it's a very, very powerful way of teaching, and yeah, he's just absolutely amazing. I mean, I just give it up to him. So so we are in this season, and in this time, we are being brought into mature sonship, into the full participation in our with our inheritance. We have. we have an inheritance. We possess it. It's not something that we will have in the future. It's not something that we say, okay, this is going to be given to you at some point in time if you do this. And if you do that, then this will be given to you. And if you uh, serve here, or if you study this, or if you accomplish this, or if you arrive at this, or if you, then you will experience, and then you will have, and then you will. That is not the gospel. Okay, that is the spirit of works. That's not the gospel. The gospel says there is an inheritance that has already been given to you. It's not something that you're looking to get somewhere down the road. You already have an inheritance. You've already been given an inheritance. And why am I given that inheritance? Because of your value, because of who you are. See, that's why, again, it's imperative to be understand and we get a grip of our value. Because if we don't understand our value, we will never be able to lay hold of our inheritance, because it's not going to make any sense. You know, if you see yourself a certain way, and if you perceive yourself a certain way, and then someone comes and starts talking to you about immortality, you're never going to get it. It's just never, you're never going to get it. You will never believe it. You just never believe that. Because the reality of it is, you can only embrace and engage what is around you and in you based upon what you believe about you, what you inherently believe in reference to your value. So I can talk about a whole lot of stuff, and you can hear about a whole lot of stuff, but if you don't are not truly persuaded in reference to your value, and not just your value, but the value of others around you. So the key is like a two-way, it's a thing that swings both ways. Okay? Your value and then the value of others around you. See, if you know your value, you are going to be able to unlock the value of others around you. You're going to want to, you are going to position yourself to engage others to win. Because when they win, you win. That's the secret. That's the secret. That's it right there. If you, so once you know and you are appreciative of your value, inevitably, you are going to engage those around you. You will not be able to help yourself. Why? Because it's something that happens. It just does that, right? It behaves a certain way. And you talk about, gosh, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it talks about, when you talk about platforms and ecosystems, there's a way in which that thing behaves. There's a way that heaven operates, right? It's a multi-point. Doesn't matter what part of heaven you touch, there is intrinsic, incredible value that you gain. Okay, it's like that. So anyhow, the point is that we can't talk about the greater things, the deeper things, and the things that matters to our inheritance if you of yourself, if me, Kevin, of myself, have not yet appreciated my own personal value. It doesn't make any, I can talk about all kinds of stuff for years and never walk in these things if I don't really appreciate my value. And this is why coming out of Canada, I was faced with this specific thought, and has been engaged in this way by the person of the Holy Spirit. Value, 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 value. Okay? All right. Last but not least. So we are going to go on a journey of sonship, and we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks the stages of sonship. because the scripture talks about different kinds of sonship, and different levels of sonship, and different expressions of sonship. And one, the expressions and I say levels is not more important than the other in that sense. It's like saying, is a grown man more important than a baby girl, than a baby boy? He was a baby boy, or he's a toddler, then he's a boy, and then he's a teenager, or he's a preteen, and then he's a teenager, and then he's a young man, and then he grows into this whole maturation stages. At every stage is important, and every stage is valuable, right? Every stage is imperative, but there is an objective, and that objective is to come to maturity, right? There's an objective to come to maturity. So we are going to talk about the different stages of sonship, with special emphasis on the concept of eutysia. And we're going to talk a lot about eutysia, and we're going to talk a lot about what that really means and the impact of it. And we want to be as empirical and relevant as we possibly can when we get to talking about eutysia, right? Um, mm, so the journey that we are about to take is going to take us from, um, as again mirrored by the prodigal son, from servanthood to sonship, from striving, where we are always striving to something, we are always striving to inheritance. That's one of the things the finished work did bring to us. And at first, we really didn't understand how to unlock it, the idea of the finish. And no, I'm so thankful that over this last, well, 7, 8 years, over the last decade or so, I've come to the understanding of it, that the finished work is really about our inheritance and how we engage that, and how do we leverage what is already true of us, in manifesting that reality in myriad ways, right? So that's where the exercise is. That's where a lot of the exercise, when it comes to Eutychia, how do we exercise the inheritance that we already have? How do we engage our inheritance? How do we spend, as it were? How do we tap into? How do we open up the doorways for others to share in that and to benefit from it? So talking about not striving anymore. We're not striving anymore, but we are engaging what is true. And that's the position, I think, where we are in the earth in terms of the sons of God in this hour, is the is no longer striving to get something, to reach something, to engage, it's none of that anymore. It is all about our inheritance, and how we engage it. So, moving from that sense of immaturity to maturity, from glory to glory. And so that's the idea. That's the journey that we're about to take, as we look in the mirror, as we behold ourselves, and as we begin to truly appreciate who we are in Christ and who we are in Him. Like Paul said it, he said it. In Him we live, yes. In Him we move, yes. And in Him we have our being, yes. That's the point. That's the pivotal point in which we cannot walk away from. We cannot engage in the prodigal behavior of walking away, far away from. Okay. And that's what we've been taught to do. We've been taught to journey to a far country. That's what we've been taught. And one of the things that I think about, even in terms of as a parent, as a father, is how well did I do in allowing or in bringing an understanding to my own children, my own house, right? And by extension to all of us, how well did I do in helping others to, and all of us to understand that you do not need to go to a far country. You do not need to do that to engage your inheritance, right? That is not necessary. And what is so insane and crazy is that we see others, even people who are not really awakened in this way, doing it. They don't go to a far country. They don't, right? To engage what is true of them. And so it's really, really an opportunity for us to really take a second look at a lot of things and to really appreciate who we are and what the Father has done. And the last thing I would say this morning is the whole idea of being thankful. Thankful. That idea of thanks, that idea of being thankful. Gosh, it's so, it is so challenging. You know, when we think about, we can always talk about what we don't have. You realize that we can always talk about what we don't have. And we can, it's just, that's the thing that sort of governs and occupy a lot of our minds and our thoughts. I don't know about you, but it's something that I've recognized. You know, you 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 you're always wanting. It's almost as a place of where you're always lacking. You're always wanting. You're always desiring. It's never enough. You know what I'm saying? And the Lord is really allowing us to realize that when we talk about intrinsic value, that we come to a place of rest and we begin to really acknowledge the goodness of the Lord, the goodness of God. I tell you, when you look back 20 years ago and where you were, 20 years ago where you were, 25, 30 years ago where you were, and then you look at where you are now, do you not see the Lord? Do you not see the hand of God? Do you not see the grace of God? Do you not see the favor of the Lord? Right? You know, and do you not see where there were experiences that you had and the experience that you have that given it up to you, you would never have had those experiences. You would have never lived in those spaces. You'd have never chosen to go in certain directions. But it happened. You did. We did experience what we experienced. But you know what? In the midst of it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the Father has brought us through, and the Father has loved on us, and the Father has been gracious to us, and He has just been a good, good Father. You know, and it's just like what Jesus talked about in the prodigal son. The father is there and he's looking not at what you did, he's looking not at the mistakes you made, he's not looking at the ifs and the what ifs and all of that. That's not what he sees. What the Father sees is your value. And boy, oh boy, Father, by the power of your Holy Spirit, we ask you in this hour that we would truly, completely see what you see, our value. Amen. So that's it for me.